We're going to reconvene the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, and I believe Commissioner O'Brien has a request.
Mr. Chairman, under Emergency Services District, item 15A4 is the approval of an affiliation agreement renewal between Health Career Institute and our Indian River County Emergency Services District. I just asked the board if they would mind moving that up, and we can take a quick vote, and then Chief Stone can get back to doing more important stuff than sitting here.
Okay, if there's no objections from my fellow commissioners, we'll go ahead and do that, and at the same time, or right after that, we'll approve or not approve the minutes. So with that, everybody okay on that? Moving it up, I'll take a vote. So we're in agreement with that. Go on.
Just, Chief, if you want to make any word, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the affiliation agreement.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Zork. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Fletcher dissenting. I'll ask if anybody. Absent. I'll ask if there's anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 7th, 21st, and 11th. Commissioner Adams moves.
Second.
Commissioner Zork seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Commissioner Fletcher absent. With that, thank you, Chief Stone. We'll go back to the regular order of the agenda, which is County Administrator items, 2020 preliminary state legislative list of concerns. Mr. Jason, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we have before you the preliminary legislative list for 2020. And sometimes I forget my name. And so this is the preliminary list that we use to get direction from the board to advocate for certain things, say at the Florida Association of Counties Conference. FAC has put out their request for policy proposals. I think we're looking at a few of those between all of the folks here. And this just gives us general direction to be able to provide, to support or oppose various things that are going on. It hits the high points, some of the things that come up seemingly year after year, like vacation rentals and affordable housing. Some of our big issues, obviously, biosolids, recycling, as we'll talk about a little bit more later, lagoon priorities. I know we've got something that we may be looking at on customary use that the attorney's office is working on. I think we may have something on the contamination issue that a commissioner is working on. So this gives us just that blanket, the basic bones and framework. We will come back later in the year with our final legislative policy once we get more detail and find out as we go through the process some additional things that may be coming up that we haven't anticipated yet. So this is basically the beginning of that. One thing I would like to add that's not on here is there is a potential minor boundary change between Indian River and St. Lucie County. There's an oceanfront lot that is half in Indian River, half in St. Lucie County. We have begun working with St. Lucie County staff and reaching out to the folks in the process on a potential bill to make a minor modification that would move that oceanfront lot all the way into Indian River County. On the opposite side of A1A, there's about 5 lots that are in a development that's mostly in St. Lucie, partially in Indian River County, and we would propose to move those into St. Lucie County. So there's one, so if there's a fire call in that development, it comes from St. Lucie County, and there's not a question of where it is. A minor change, there's going to be quite a process for that, but we're trying to work on that for this year. So just wanted to mention that as well here. So with that, if the board has any comments or suggested changes or additions, that is the proposed preliminary legislative plan. Thank you.
And I've got one on section Florida Statutes 180, and I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that. That allows municipalities a reach out of about 5 miles to serve utilities, and it's what the city of Vero Beach right now uses to make sure that the South Beach customers to their water and sewer utility remain customers of the city of Vero Beach. And I'll just read a first paragraph of a letter written by former county attorney Polakowicz when this issue had come up prior. It reads, "The ultimate issue is who should decide which local government provides utility services in the unincorporated areas of the county. The choices are the Board of County Commissioners, which is elected by all voters of the county, including those residing in the unincorporated areas, or the city councils of municipalities located in the county which are not elected by the residents of unincorporated areas and otherwise have no jurisdiction over the unincorporated areas. The answer should be simple. The Board of County Commissioners, which is directly accountable to the residents of the unincorporated areas, should make the decision. The board, or some members of the board, have put off this issue for a number of years because of the electric issue. We had different citizens, specifically Dr. Faraday, who had pushed this, and I remember a few times the county attorney and myself asked him to delay pushing this because of the electric issue, but the electric issue is gone. But on top of that, evidently the city of Vero Beach is now talking about building a new $50 million wastewater treatment plant. And it's going to affect their water system, I believe. And it's going to result, I think, in a change of rates for the city of Vero Beach. And right now, there's an informal agreement where the South Beach customers have county rates for their water. But that's something that the city council could reverse at any time, as well as put on other fees. So I would just like, I don't consider this to be one of the 5 main priorities of the commission, but I believe, or I'd like to see it on the list if my fellow commissioners are good with that.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem adding it to the list. I will give you a caveat. When this came up a few years back, FAC was a little bit opposed to taking up a policy that might put them in direct conflict with the Florida League of Cities. They try not to butt heads directly with the League of Cities. And I know that there's also some opposition from a couple, I think it was Broward County, because they have some different agreements with some of their city utilities that would have affected their water supply. So I just give you that caveat that there may be some headwinds.
No, I understand there are headwinds, but I'm
Yeah.
not expecting anything to happen in the next year or two.
Yep, but I have no problem putting it onto our list. That's fine.
I'm afraid, there are things in that statute or that law, one which allows them at will to add a 25% fee. And I find that to be particularly egregious. And then if they can come up with good reasoning for it, or even some reasoning for it, they can add a 50% surcharge. So I think I just want to start the process to let our South County citizens know that we are concerned for them, and then to put us on a path forward where if things do get worse, we can show that we've been working on it. So that's.
You'd like me to make a motion, if you want a motion for this, or just consensus, or?
Do you need a?
I was just thinking, most of our items here have Indian River County supports or opposes, and I was just trying to come up with some language. So basically, if Indian River County supports policies that would allow the county to protect county customers under 180, or I'm just trying to get a sense of what we would support.
Well, actually, I can give you the letter from Mr. Polakowicz, was written in July of 2012 and sent to Representative Mayfield.
Okay.
And that'll put us on a pretty clear path.
Okay.
Make
I was
a
just trying
motion
to come
that
up
Chairman Solari and Dylan get together to work on wording to add Chapter 180 to our legislative priorities.
Fine. Motion from Commissioner O'Brien. I'll second it. Any other questions or comments? Anybody from the public? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Flesher being absent.
And then you just want a motion to approve
Absolutely.
so move to approve all of the preliminary legislative list.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Adams. Any other discussion? Anybody from the public? There being nobody from the public. Jason.
And do you want to give direction on the county line thing to pursue that?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would be-
I think it's a very common sense thing. I think we should include it. I did talk to Nicole Fogarty, the St. Lucie legislative person last week, and she indicated that their board is pretty much all supportive of it. And so it's just now a matter of figuring out how to do the legislative process, I think. I'm fully supportive of it. I think it'll serve both counties well, and it just makes a lot of common sense, so.
And I will say it's getting a little more complex than we initially thought. One thing that we're reaching out to all of the other taxing authorities that could be impacted It's a pretty small amount, so I don't anticipate trouble. I've heard from, I'm playing phone tag with the school superintendent, but I've heard from the hospital district and mosquito control, no real concerns there. I know St. Lucie County folks might be a little bit more sensitive to this issue because there was an issue between a boundary redraw between St. Lucie and Martin County a few years ago that they're a little sore about. I will say that there is also a process that St. Lucie County will want us to go through although this isn't a local bill, there's an advertising process for a local bill. They're going to want to have that done because that's what their representatives are going to want of them. They're going to want that of us too, so that adds some additional timeline to it. So we'll proceed with that with that direction. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just note that Mr. Berenborg from Representative Graw's office has been very helpful on this particular issue. So since he's in the audience, I'd like to thank him for that. So we have a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Flesher being absent. Move on to County Administrator items B, City of Sebastian annexation. Mr. Brown.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to have a discussion about the proposed Sebastian annexation with the board here. We talked about this with some of the Sebastian representatives on the MPO meeting yesterday. That conversation was primarily focused on transportation. You have in your backup the staff letter that county staff had sent to city staff with our concerns, which primarily deal with water, wastewater provision, the transportation issues, and some general planning questions. That has been included in the backup for the City of Sebastian's P&Z meeting, which is Thursday night, this Thursday, August 15th. And we will submit this for backup to the City Council's regularly scheduled meeting for the second hearing, which is scheduled for August 28th. We can always amend this with any new comments or revised comments that we have, if we have any, between here and there. One of the things, we talked about the transportation stuff well yesterday. One of the issues that we want to make clear is the water and wastewater service provision. The initial staff report from the City of Sebastian basically said that the county was compelled to provide services. Our interpretation of that interlocal agreement is that we are not compelled to provide those services. We are the provider of water and wastewater services per an interlocal agreement with the City of Sebastian. And we are compelled to provide services if it's within the city. And our understanding of that agreement is if there is an annexation that's already within the urban service areas, such as Spirit of Sebastian that happened a few years ago, that we provide those. But that if it's an expansion outside of the urban service boundary, then you have conflicts with our current comp plan. The proposed development doesn't comply with our comp plan, so therefore we are not compelled to provide services. Doesn't mean we will not and cannot provide services, but we have some capacity limitations, and we've made a commitment to provide services to other portions of the county, and we do not want to jeopardize our ability to provide services to those other areas. And any service provision in that area would need to be worked out, and there could be some significant owner contributions that might be needed in order to make that happen, if we're able to make that happen. I will say that the city staff has acknowledged that in their backup for the P&Z meeting. I don't know, I haven't gotten that they agree with our position on that. Haven't gotten a firm answer on what their final position is. So just wanted to state that, make everyone know that, and I think we talked well about the concerns about the impacts on County Road 510, 82nd Avenue, the right-of-way purchases, and the impact on the surrounding communities. I believe from a planning standpoint, and not trying to micromanage or get in the way of the City of Sebastian and tell them what to do, but there are a lot of things that are left open in the process that they're going through right now that would be resolved with something like an annexation agreement that could deal with some of these items, such as the City of Sebastian doesn't have a mixed-use zoning. And so in lieu of having mixed use identified in the plan, there's a very large area of commercial and industrial development I think the report shows something over 2.5 million square feet of industrial and over 1 million square feet of commercial property. Things like that could be limited in an annexation agreement. But basically, I just wanted to talk to the board and get direction on what actions you wanted us to take from here. If you wanted us to take any formal actions to further to see where this process goes. I think we had a good conversation yesterday at the MPO. I think the message was that they need to slow down and kind of get this right before they make such a huge annexation that could impact the future of Sebastian and change its character. I don't know what they'll do with that, so I just wanted to kind of get any additional thoughts from the board on those non-transportation issues and what actions you would like staff to take going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. For myself, one of the important issues, the one you brought up is with the sewer and water. And it's clear to me, at least, that we would not be responsible for providing sewer and water to that area. We would be happy to discuss with almost anybody, provided the same way we have up in Fellsmere. But the important thing is that the sewer and water is an enterprise zone, and the cost of any such expansion has got to be borne by the person making the request and not existing customers. And we've seen what happens when local governments use utilities for other than service to their customers. And we just helped pull away some of our citizens from a bad problem with that. But I certainly don't think that we could possibly ask our existing customers to pay for somebody else's sewer and water. I mean, that's what impact fees are for and developers' agreements are for and other things. But I think that everybody from the start has got to be clear with that. The second thing that I took away from the MPO meeting yesterday was that the city of Sebastian hasn't really quite yet had the conversations they need to have with different people impacted with this. The land that they're talking about annexing is the Sebastian Improvement District, over 1,000 acres of land in the Improvement District. But we had the former executive director of the Improvement District say they haven't had a conversation with the Sebastian Improvement District about how they would work together with that. And I think it's incumbent on them to do that. There is no real development plan for the property. And we've seen how well that can work out in Fellsmere. I mean, when Fellsmere was doing the big annexation with the Corrigan property, there was a lot of concern by a lot of people, but Fellsmere and the Corrigans got together, had discussions, and there was a real annexation agreement which put a lot of the community at ease. And I think that needs to happen here. There were a number of citizens from Sebastian who spoke against going forward at this time, saying that there hadn't been the conversations, they hadn't been heard yet. So again, that goes to what you suggested about asking them to slow it down. So there are just so many things about what the final use of the land might look like, what the right-of-ways might look like, whether there are going to be dedications of right-of-ways along 510, which would help everybody. I think the applicant as well as Sebastian as well as the county. And I don't see myself, but again, I'm not integral to the process, what the hurry would be. I mean, I don't see anything happening within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So there's plenty of time for all the parties to get together and see if this can be done in absolutely the right way. And so I think that what a lot of people suggested at the MPO meeting to slow the process down and do it right and try to get, use the Fellsmere-Corrigan annexation agreement as a sort of template or a path forward. I think that most people in the community would appreciate that and move forward. So that's certainly something I would like to see happen going forward.
Mr. Sharon, I would agree a lot with everything you said, and also with Jason's statement that we're not here to tell Sebastian whether they should or should not annex. We certainly don't want to get in that situation, but I think we do want to make sure they do it right. And this does seem rushed. You're correct that there is one reason why it's rushed. It's because we're accumulating right-of-way on 82nd Avenue and 510. So there's a rush to upzone that so the landowner gets higher payment. And I was very concerned about a couple things that came up yesterday. One, that the city manager didn't think that changing the future land use of land wouldn't affect the valuation. I just found that kind of mind-boggling to have that position. And then also when the council members position that, well, you know, it's only 1,100 acres, so we don't really need a annexation agreement. And it just seems, well, that is a big annexation. Maybe not quite as big as a 6,000 or 8,000, but certainly it's big enough to have a major impact. And that I thought that Commissioner Adams and the new Fellsmere City Manager Mark Mathis did a very good job explaining, well, no, you know, we do a annexation agreement if it's 10 acres or 40, you know, any annexation, we have this agreement. And I think that's really where Sebastian needs to just slow it down, table this thing, and get all of the stakeholders involved and work all these issues out. I know that Councilmember Dodd seemed very upset that we had said that, well, we're not going to maintain these stormwater ponds within the city limits. And he actually said something to the effect, well, so much for cooperation, very sarcastically. And it's like, well, we don't maintain anything in the city of Sebastian. You know, I mean, that's their property. So things like that need to be, you know, worked out. And these are the details that need to be done before the annexation is approved. And I hope the city council recognizes that and realizes there's still an awful lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed before they move forward with this. So hopefully they'll consider that and not take action on this on the 28th.
I'd like to repeat one thing you said. It was very good having both Commissioner Adams and Mr. Mathis from Fellsmere there yesterday.
Right.
It added, I thought, a tremendous amount to the conversation, so thank you very much. And it showed, you know, that there was a better way of doing it that was certainly not rocket science, but needed to be attended to with deliberation. And so, thank you.
Yes, just like to add, kind of watching how the Fellsmere process has taken place a number of times, and there's the big ones, and then there's been smaller ones. I think from both sides, from the applicant wanting to be annexed, whether it's the current piece or other ones, that when you have the agreement, the expectations are all out on the table. You don't annex and then find out the city might want this, and then the property owner had a different set of expectations, and nobody's on the same page on a lot of these very important items that currently don't seem to have had the needed discussion that they need. So I think it's really, it's good for both sides to have all these things done. Everybody knows what they're on the hook for, what they're expected to do or dedicate or pay for. And I think some of that could be improved in the Sebastian side where, and I get their excitement to, I don't know what this represents to the population of the city and the square miles of the city, but it's obviously a significant change. But even with all that excitement, I think having expectations and anticipations on both sides out there, everybody knows what we're expecting for today, tomorrow, 20 years from now, all gets put into like the agreement that Fellsmere uses. And I think it's great that their agreement is universal enough that it works for a 10-acre piece or a 1,000-acre piece or 5,000 acres. It's the same concept to make sure you're not leaving some very important items not discussed or that they're not at the table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of said a lot of my concerns yesterday related to the road connectivity. I still have a lot of concerns about the connectivity of the North County area. 510 is a major east-west connector. It's a major evacuation route, and it has some major capacity issues that are only going to get worse in the interim before DOT can move forward with that project. So I have significant concerns about what the potential of delay this might create. 82nd Avenue, significant concerns there about the potential for that delay because we do need another north-south connector. North County, you know, unless you're going 512 to US 1 or 512 to 60, 510 is your only option. And having just two options is very concerning for the amount of growth that's expected in North County in the coming years. I also have serious concerns, and I'm not sure how it works with the interrelationship between the Sebastian River Improvement District and the city of Sebastian. I don't think it's clear to anyone exactly whose authority would trump whose. And I think that's something that really needs to be worked out ahead of time, because what's going to end up happening is half of the improvement district will be in the city limits and half won't be. And what happens when they have to assess a fee on our county people to pay for improvements that they need to develop inside the city limits? Those are just issues that need to have conversations and worked out, and that's not even getting into the utility issue. We have projects and developments that will be coming online in the future that we've already had discussions with about providing services to. And that's not to say that we can't provide services to this area, but just like the conversations that were had in Fellsmere annexations and other annexations, you have to work that out ahead of time. And it typically takes landowner and developer participation to move those types of large-scale utility projects forward. And if you're not having those conversations before the annexation happens, what will happen is in 10 or 15 years when somebody wants to develop, now everybody's under I thought we were under this situation, but we're really under this situation, and you end up with just a giant mess and more confusion and conflict that's really unnecessary. I think everything that the city of Sebastian would like to do is doable, but it's doable with the proper conversations. And having been on the other side of it, I understand that there's a lot of communication internally in the city. They have been probably talking about this for quite some time and trying to get their ducks in a row to move it forward. But those conversations also need to happen with people outside of City Hall. And that's my concern, that those conversations, while they might have happened peripherally, I mean, I know we've kind of been trying to get some information out of them since February. They haven't happened in depth enough to make everybody comfortable that we have figured out a path forward when something does start happening there. And the last thing I would say is, annexation agreements are good not only for the city, but also for the property owner. So everybody understands what everybody's expectations are, and it's very clear. In the city of Fellsmere, we had an instance where we have, with FJV, we have an annexation agreement. There was some concern about providing some space for an industrial park or part of the REACT district. And we had to reference that annexation agreement several times to solidify the amount of property. They were under one impression, we were under another impression, and we had an annexation agreement that clearly dictated what that requirement was. So even with an annexation agreement, you can have some disagreements, but if you don't have one at all, you're gonna have some very, very serious disagreements that then snowball into very, very serious issues that impact the surrounding community. And that's kind of where my concerns are. So my hope is that they will slow down the process to allow us to have some conversations and try to work this stuff out beforehand. Because it's much easier to work it out beforehand than afterwards. Once they are annexed into the city, they have the same right as anybody else in the city. So your ability to put things in place falls away once that annexation is approved. And I think that's everybody's concern. It's not that the annexation is pending or going to happen, but that we would like to work everything out before the final approval so everybody's understanding what the playing field is that we're playing on. So I don't know how we do that. I don't know what our options are, but my message to Sebastian is, hey, we're supportive of what you're trying to do, but let's work together to make it something that's beneficial for everybody, so in 20 years, we're not dealing with a big craziness.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll see if there's anybody from the public who wants to comment on this issue. Name and address to the record, please.
Good morning. Joseph Paladin, Vero Beach resident. I'm speaking as a member of the IRNA and a member of the advisory board. And I was at the MPO meeting yesterday, and all 4 county commissioners that were there did an excellent job. And Commissioner O'Brien cleared up pretty much our letter from the IRNA on where we stood. There was a misspeak on us supporting it. The IRNA, we're not supporting this annexation. We really can't think about that without an annexation agreement. I mean, without an annexation agreement that's similar to the one that Fellsmere did with Corrigan, there's no way that we would even consider supporting a blanket annexation agreement where we don't know what it contains. And I think you all need to really, the 1,100 acres, yeah, that's not thousands of acres, but that's the beginning. There's thousands of acres out there that can be annexed along with this 1,100 acres someday, so we have to consider that. And you got to have a plan before you do the annexation. We want to see a plan before you do the annexation, not after that. After you do the annexation, you lose all your leverage. I mean, your leverage is gone. So to say that you take a position to support it before you see the annexation agreement is ridiculous. But we would definitely support something similar to what Fellsmere did with Corrigan Ranch. We thought the things that were listed in there was very good and we could live with. But at this point, the IRNA does not support the annexation. So I want to make that clear. Mr. O'Brien made that clear yesterday, but I wanted to make that clear here for the IRNA people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? To the podium, please. Name and address for the record, please.
Short microphone. Brian Corrigan, 1051 Indian Mountain Trail. You know, the western part of the county, the only reason I hear my name, Corrigan Ranch, I'm part of that. And you know, when Fellsmere and Commissioner Adams was mayor at the time, when they said 50% green space as part of our annexation, you know, our initial response was no way. I mean, you know, it's like communist Russia. But I think as we met with the community members and their concerns, you know, you realize that what we do affects others and it affects the environment. And that was a compromise that was reached. And we even got the support. I'm a member of the IRNA now. I was not at the time. We even got the support of Honey Manous and the IRNA because we worked with other people. And I think, just remember, given the option, yeah, I'd like to have 4% green space as a proposed annexation. So whatever precedent you set, there's 10,000 acres of unannexed land there. Whatever precedent is set, everybody else is going to do that. So if it's 4% green space, you ain't getting any more. And that just seems low given the headwaters. I know that the Sebastian River Improvement District is an improvement district created by the legislature. They have all the powers, say, for land use. How are they going to relate with the city of Sebastian? Ask Commissioner Adams how easy it's been to deal with the Fellsmere Water Control District. I'm sure the county's dealt with the road issue. They're just a water control district. They are not an improvement district, especially not an improvement district where the controlling member is Graves Brothers in the annexation. How's that going to happen? They have the power to tax. They have the power to do a lot of different things. So I think that you're dealing with one municipality annexing part of another, and how is that interaction going to happen? Additionally, the city of Fellsmere is in a 164 hearing over drainage with the Sebastian River Improvement District. I think there's a joint meeting Thursday, the 15th. You can ask Commissioner Adams how easy the Sebastian River Improvement District has been to deal with. I think Jason Brown characterized it at one point on the record as saying it was bad governance. You know, there's a lot of issues, drainage in particular, that haven't been paid attention to, and it's a serious issue. Vero Lake Estates drainage, Sebastian River, it's all tied in together. I know we came with our attorney and tried to get the county to participate, and the commission opted not to. You know, I worry that Sebastian is going to annex a lawsuit with the city of Fellsmere, and that's not good for anybody. I just think there's a lot of things that have to be hammered out. My family annexed, and I'm all for annexation. But I think, trying to get it done while everybody's out of town in August, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So I would encourage the commission and the city of the city of Sebastian, sit down and listen to everyone's concerns, address the 164 hearing. You talked about a lady here who bought a property with a demolition lien. If Sebastian annexes this land, how are they going to deal with the drainage concerns that the city of Ellesmere has? I think that's a real issue. It's a serious issue. So I just ask that the commission really think about the precedence that's being set here, and assume that, whatever precedent is set, the other 9,000 acres in that unannexed area, the hole in the donut, that's what people are going to want. Thank you.
I have to point out that the commission is not setting any precedents. We don't have any real choice in this matter. We can say to Sebastian, the same as any other member of the public, that, these are some concerns you ought to pay attention to, but we've got no ability to stop them, no ability to require them to do anything. And so we don't write the big laws for this, the same way we didn't for the section 180 that I mentioned earlier. These are laws from Tallahassee. So it's not a matter of us setting any precedent. It's a matter of Sebastian doing the right thing for Sebastian and the surrounding community.
Yes, Commissioner, and I misspoke there as far as,
I particularly don't want the public to think that we're deciding anything regarding that annexation.
I just made the expectation of, hey, if you do 1,000 acres, then what are the other people going to want? What expectation is Sebastian setting? And the 82nd roadway and 510 are critical too. Those projects have been delayed too long, and really need to see those continue. So thank you.
Anybody else from the public? So, Mr. Brown, you've heard us. Do you have enough direction, or do you want anything more specific?
So what I'm hearing is we want to slow it down. Let's look at an annexation agreement. This thing seems like it needs to be tabled, at least on the, for the city council's August 28th meeting, I think would be our ask. So we can do communications on that.
Do you want us to send a letter to them, and do you want it under the name of the chairman or yourself?
Either, yeah, if we could do it either way, I'd be happy to send a letter, or the board, if you want to have authorize the chairman to send a letter, we can do that either way, asking just that question.
I'd prefer we authorize a letter from the chairman, saying the board requests that they table this and work with all interested parties to resolve some of these outstanding issues.
And written in the kindest, gentlest way, so I'll ask maybe Dylan to help me with it. And if there's...
Including a paragraph or two on democracy and the standard boilerplate stuff.
Jeffersonian
The real fun
principles.
stuff. So, do you want a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we...
So we have the motion from Commissioner O'Brien. I'll be happy to second it. Any other conversation? All in favor?
If you all need to go to the meetings, I'd authorize staff to go to the P&Z and the city council meeting.
Yeah, I think we plan to have some staff at both of those meetings. And as a point of clarification, I don't know if this is where the board wants to go, but there are ways to challenge an annexation. I don't know that we're in the driver's seat necessarily on that, but that is a possibility. I don't know if that's what the board wants to do, but I just wanted to say that I don't think we want to get in the business of trying to micromanage. I think the idea is let's work collaboratively on this between the county and the city, but I just wanted to put that out there as a...
But is that something we need to discuss today? If
I will, at least on that point, just state that I will do what we need to preserve whatever rights this board wishes to take going forward.
So, yeah, and I wouldn't characterize this as micromanagement, Jason. I think these are big issues. These are very big, serious issues. I don't see this as micromanaging. As Commissioner Adams said, this is making sure that 20 years from now, this thing just hasn't blown up everywhere. And so I would also say that, I guess we meet September 4th?
10th.
10th, okay. So if after the 28th, if we need a special call meeting or something to address, if Dylan needs something to bring to us right away, I'm all for that as well.
So we actually have 30 days following the passage if the board were to challenge it. So that falls within the September 10th deadline. So I think we have plenty of time there.
So just, amend the motion to include the county attorney to make sure all of our interests are preserved, however he sees fit.
And I agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Bright. I probably didn't use the right word choice as micromanaging. And I would say, and it said this in the letter that staff sent, was the reason the county's so concerned are the things we're raising are impacts on services we have to provide. Water and wastewater is what they're saying has to be provided, which we differ on. And then the transportation, County Road 510 is something that is used by the whole county. It's certainly not, it's something that impacts the residents of Sebastian, of course, but Fellsmere, Barrier Island folks use it. It's just a major thoroughfare that people use to get north, south, or east, west in this county. So those are the reasons for our concerns. So the impacts on the county as a whole and the services that the county would have to provide, whether it's in the city or not.
So with that, the motion basically captures the letter from the chairman, preserving the county attorney doing whatever to preserve the rights of the county going forward, and allowing staff to attend whatever meetings or do whatever other work related to this issue. So that's the motion by Commissioner O'Brien, which I've seconded. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0, Commissioner Flesher being absent. Thank you very much. We move on now to Public Works, award of bid number 2019012, Vero Lake Estates, 85th Street petition paving. Good morning, Mr. Spierka.
Morning, Commissioners. Rich Spierka, Public Works Director. Back in April of 2013, the Vero Lake Estates MSTU Advisory Committee provided a prioritized list of roadways that they would like to see milled or paved. 85th Street was part of that list. And what we have today is the bid for that project. Based on past performance of millings in high traffic areas, we're seeing that the roadways aren't performing as they were previously anticipated to perform. Milling roadways are degrading quicker than was expected. We're having problems with maintenance of the roadways. It's not on high traffic areas. The only way to fix a millings road is to fill it with asphalt. It creates more of a problem than anything else. So the long-term solution is for paving of roadways. DOT does not recognize millings as a roadway surface due to the fact of the inconsistency in the material. Regardless of how you come up with to install it, there are places that will fail over time, and we've seen that in numerous millings roads that we have in the county. With this in mind, the engineering designed this roadway with two options. One option was to go with just millings, as we've done in the past. The second option, or alternate, was to go ahead and pave the roadway for longevity using standard roadway practices. We opened the bids, we advertised and opened the bids, and Tim Rose Contracting was the low bidder on the base bid for the millings portion of the roadway, $586,000, about $340,000 lower than the engineer's estimate. Tim Rose was also considered the lowest bid for the alternate bid, which would be paving of the roadway, at $921,000, about $400,000 less than the engineer's estimate. Funding's available from the Vero Lake Estates 85th Milling Street account for 75% of the cost. This is collected from the Vero Lake Estates in an MSTU fund. The other 25% of $230,000 is available in the secondary roads account. Staff recommends the alternate bid in the amount of $921,263.40 for the construction of a paved roads be awarded to Tim Rose Construction. Staff has discussed this with Alan Green, a representative from the Vero Lake Estates MSTU Advisory Committee. Mr. Greenidge supports staff's recommendation. Staff further recommends the board approve the sample agreement, authorize the chairman to execute said agreement, and after review and approval of both the agreement and required public construction bond by the county attorney as to form and legal sufficiency, and the receipt and approval of the required risk managers.
Move staff recommendation.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Adams. Any other conversation, discussion? Anybody from the public wish to comment on this issue? There be none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Fleischer absent. Thank you very much. We now move to utilities, North Sebastian Septic to Sewer Phase 2 status and direction. Mr. Burke.
Good morning. Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. We have an update to the board with respect to the North Sebastian Septic to Sewer Phase 2. We received the check this morning from the state. We want to reach out and say thank you for that, but there's some issues that we wanted to bring to the board's attention. So just a quick history. Back in 2013, we actually did a feasibility study with local engineering firm Master & Moeller, taking a look at this area in and around the St. Sebastian and the Indian River Lagoon. The study was presented to the board in February of 2014. And then we completed the first phase of the septic to sewer for the commercial area in September of last year. And then staff brought to the board a uniform septic to sewer policy that had 6 different items associated with that. A couple of those items are included in the agenda backup for review. In January of 29 of this year, staff, along with Commissioner Adams, presented some information to the Roseland community just to get their feedback and input with respect to a potential project in and around the Ursuline Heights, west of Roseland Road area. February of 2019, staff submitted grant applications to 2 agencies. One is to the St. Johns River Water Management District for their cost share funding application, which in essence is 33% of the construction portion of any particular project, as well as the State of Florida Legislative Appropriations request. You may recall that both of the county projects scored very well, but the one from Public Works scored a little bit higher than the septic to sewer portion, and ultimately there was a cap of $1.5 million. Sum total of both those projects was closer to $3 million, and so the board directed staff to move forward with the Public Works and not the septic to sewer. And then in June of this year, we actually found out through the appropriations request that the county did receive $500,000. Keep in mind that we asked for about $1.6, $1.7 million for the septic to sewer project for the Phase 2 residential portion, but we had $500,000 of which we received that check today. So here's a little busy slide, but in essence, on the right-hand part of the screen are the parcels that would be considered benefiting parcels, 201 in the Phase 2 portion of the project. Most of the areas west of Roseland Road, northwest of Roseland Road and US 1 are not connected to county water. They're considered domestic self-supply, aka private wells. There's been some issues with respect to some of the water quality and some of the issues associated with the wells in and around that area. We did a small little specialized project down around 128th Court earlier this year to get some of the few parcels connected. But in essence, you can look at the total water and sewer project cost for the entire Phase 2 area of 201 parcels of just close to $7.7 million. And on the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, I had basically stated that we did not get the cost share request from St. John's, but we did get successful legislative appropriations of $500,000. So we reached out to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They're the agency that was charged with handling some of the state appropriations, and asked, would it be possible to us to reduce, in essence, the scope of the project to still use the appropriation dollars? And the short answer is yes, we would be able to do that. So staff took a look at an area of 75 parcels that could be used as a smaller portion of the project. As we had stated earlier, these are on domestic self-supply, private wells, so this project would include not only sewer, centralized sewer with the lift station to tie to that force main that's shown on the map, but also to install potable water, which is about $350,000 just for the water portion of the project. So If you take the sewer, which also has some of the impact fees listed here, about $179,000, you notice that there's 75 parcels within this area. However, only 64 are actually improved properties, according to the Property Appraiser's Office. 7 of them are undeveloped, and 4 of the parcels are owned by the county. We, in essence, have a $2.25 million sewer-only portion of the project, and there's some costs associated with the abandonment of the septic tank and tying in from the clean-out to the stick of pipe and the roadway. And if you combine the water, it's a $2.6 million total project cost. Note that these are estimates at this time based on the opinion of probable cost and some of the recent projects that we've gone out to bid, but certainly could fluctuate if we do go out to bid. So highlights from the septic to sewer policy. One was to establish a financing interest rate of 2% or half of the current rate. Actually, current rate is 5.5. I apologize. So that rate would be 2.75%. One is to extend the amortization period. Instead of 10 years, which we currently have in code, we'd work with the Indian River County tax collector and the property appraiser to add the annual assessment fee to the property tax bill, spread those costs out over a much longer period of time. This could be accomplished pursuant to Florida Statute 197, the uniform method for the levy and the collection of non-ad valorem special assessments to defray the septic to sewer cost. There's certainly time frames that we would have to abide by that are set forth by statute, and so we would have to have a public hearing held prior to January 1st of the intended tax year notice. The third one is to offer a septic to sewer impact fee credit of 100% for those properties who commit to connecting to sewer before it is available to the property. It's a sliding scale. In essence, the longer you wait, the more you will pay. Our impact fee is $27.96 for the sewer, of which we would use optional sales tax monies to offset the impact fee, which covers the transmission and wastewater treatment capacity. So here is just a funding scenario to consider. Certainly one that identifies the legislative appropriations on the sewer portion of the project of $500,000. There was just a kind of Excel analysis to look at funding options in order to try to look at what the total impact would be on a annual basis down here of sewer and water, or sewer only portion of the project. We also wanted the board to know that if you combine some of these amounts with, say, 5,000 gallons per usage, you look at a monthly cost of about $127.48. Another option was obviously zero input from the utility department, which is typical from any other project that we had, but also to look at the optional sales tax dollars not to exceed 25% of the, now we're talking here project costs. This includes not only the stick of pipe, but the impact fee dollars and some of the connection costs, with close to 53% exposure for those benefiting parcels. Here is the water portion of the project, and then you can see, looking at the total project cost, of a much larger impact to the benefiting property owners of close to about 60%, even offsetting some of the costs with the optional sales tax and with the state appropriated $500,000. You'll see that the numbers jump up quite a bit. We do have some tax data for parcels in and around that area, and I can tell you that the exposure for some of the annual taxes ranges from as low as about $118 to as high as about $2,400. So when you compare some of the tax bills that are currently on the properties in that area, obviously this is a sizable annual tax exposure should we look to try to amortize those costs over a 20-year period of time with these projected costs shown here today. So again, if you look at the water and sewer consumption, it gets close to $182 or $151 for sewer only. We typically like to not have sewer only, and so in concert with the potable water sub-element policy, which looks to have 75% of the county parcels connected to centralized water by 2030, this would be part of the comprehensive plan to try to get some of these properties connected to potable water. This was just another funding scenario to consider. At the time of the agenda, we wanted to make sure that the board understood that the state appropriations administered through the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, clock started ticking July 1. That's when their fiscal year starts, and it's a 24-month period. Staff did reach out to the FDEP to say, hey, is there any way that we might be able to delay this process in some way, shape, or form? And the short answer then was yes. So if the board considers one of the possibilities is to also have staff perhaps apply to the St. Johns River Water Management District in January, February of next year when the application opens. While it's not guaranteed, certainly we scored very high for the total project area of 201 parcels. In essence, we would then limit our application to the 75 parcels and go after 33% of the construction cost. And that's what's shown here, is to try to go after the St. Johns River Water Management District portion of that as well, but certainly using the optional sales tax as a placeholder in some way, shape, or form to try to lower the tax bill assessment. So it's a little bit complicated, but certainly we're trying to use the optional sales tax as a placeholder to then allow staff to go after the cost share funding to see if we can additional dollars to try to reduce from 60% down to a more manageable 37% for those benefiting property owners, while also having them pay 100% of the cost for the water portion of the project, but lowering and giving them that incentive for the impact fees to be offset, but also trying to get as much and as many grants as possible, which was part of the recent comp plan amendments that staff have been asked to do, to go after some cost share dollars. So the pros are there's no county utility funds. Obviously, there's parity to all rate players, 50% reduction in the cost of the property owners. However, we wanted to have a caveat that if Indian River County is not successful in going after those cost share dollars, then you're looking at an exposure of close to $1.13 million from the optional sales tax, which is much, much greater than the 25%, which is part of the uniform septic to sewer policy. So here's a tentative schedule. If the board decides to move forward, then staff would meet with some of the community leaders to have a town hall meeting to go over some of the options. And then certainly we could bring some of those results back to the board in October of this year. We have a note on here that the current agreement would have to come back to the board, the $500,000, which is a reimbursable type agreement. We spend the monies, we show our invoices, then we get reimbursed from the state. We certainly might be able to push this back till the end of 2021 or even 2022. So in essence, maybe a 3-year time period, which will allow staff to go after those cost share dollars and align the two different funding agencies and the two different timelines to try to use that for the process. So items for consideration, obviously one option is to do nothing and table the project for a later date. This may shed a negative light on the county's future grant opportunities. Option 2 is to solicit other funding options like the district cost share monies. However, those are not guaranteed, but we did score very high in the past in the fundable range, so we think it's a great project, especially because it's in direct proximity to the St. Sebastian River. We note that the traditional assessment procedures can take up to 8 to 12 months, so we wanted to make sure that the board was aware that if we were to move forward, we would certainly look for direction on whether or not we try to go the traditional route, having the resolutions 1, 2, and 3, making sure that we had at least 66 2/3, but certainly there are other options if we are to move forward with respect to this process that would allow us to move forward, but we wanted to make sure that the community is aware of these things, even with some of the financial offsets that could be solicited. So thank you for listening. In short, staff recommends that based on the fact that a lot of these septic systems are installed or have been installed prior to 1983, less than the 6 inches of separation of the vadose zone. In essence, some of these are right into the water table during high rain events. We certainly would recommend this as a worthwhile project to move forward, even though there's some financial, logistical, and other complexities associated with trying to make it as financially amenable as possible. But direct staff to present these details to the homeowners, the benefiting property owners in that area at a community meeting, gauge their interest, answer questions that they have so that they're not speculating as to what would or would not happen, and then come back to update the board of the outcome of that meeting prior to the execution of the state legislative appropriations grant. appreciate you listening. I'm available for any questions that the
Thank
board
you
may
very
have.
much, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Chairman, just where I am on this is, I think we should move forward with it. On the water side, I have no problem with the benefiting parcels picking up the majority of the tab for that. However, on the sewer side, again, this is where government's coming in and telling homeowners, we're gonna do this and make you do this for the benefit of the entire lagoon. So, I think in that case, I don't have any issue in either utilizing more sales tax or the utility funding to help cover and defray that cost, because we're telling these people they have to not only pay for the hookup, but now start paying a monthly sewer bill for the benefit of the lagoon. I think the benefit of the lagoon benefits all county residents, and so I think it's only fair that all county residents should help pay for us coming in and telling these people what they have to do. So, the one option, Vinnie, you had where we use the sales tax as a placeholder and move forward with the project. And if we don't get the state appropriation, then we have the sales tax allocated for it. I'm good with moving in that direction.
Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, so the revised project area is the more historic and older part of Roseland. So, you know, this is an infrastructure project that needs to happen, not only for the health of the lagoon, but just for the health of the community. That being said, I would agree with Commissioner O'Brien. I think we need to, if we have the time, we need to look at additional funding sources or grants, whether it's St. John's or whatnot, to kind of bring some of that cost down, because I do know there are some parcels that will be constrained by income. That being said, I also think that we need to take seriously the option of placing this on the tax bill and extending that period of payment over 20 years. I think that's something we've kind of talked about with other projects, and this is a small enough project that I think it could provide the trial run on that, because I know we have to coordinate with multiple constitutional officers to see that happen. So I would agree, let's move this forward, and if we need to bring something back because we're able to get a couple of grants or one or two or whatnot to help bring that cost down further, but I think it's incumbent upon us to start having conversations with the community, because the last conversations we had, you know, we were kind of going on one assumption, and now that playing field has changed. So we need to, at the very least, update them on what's going on and then get their input on moving forward.
Commissioner Sork.
Yes, thank you. I think we need to, give this serious consideration to look at how to piece the financing together. But I think there's another component that we also have to keep in mind. For people that are on the north side of Bay Street, some of those properties are extended distances off the road that they may have to either have a lift station to get it from the north part of their property, either due to an elevation slope or just the distance doesn't allow that type of traditional gravity connection. So some of those folks, depending on the topography and what they have existing and where it is, may also have additional on-site costs to get from where their tank connection is to get it to where the tap may be in the front. And I don't know how much the consultant would look at that, but I think we have to pay some attention to that, because it's not just always getting in. The last Sebastian project, getting it to the curb, most of those were smaller lots. It was a very short connection, but on some of these, you could have some, 100-plus foot connections that they're going to have some additional costs to deal with. But I drove that Bay Street area in part. My dad grew up just off of Bay Street back in the 40s and 50s, and so I was just doing a little bit of family visiting the area back up there again. But and then we have a lot of vacant parcels that, are they vacant because of the lack of water or sewer, or are they vacant for other reasons? And maybe that'll come out in some of the community outreach side that may make them more attractive. It's just sort of the cost of converting existing neighborhoods. If you're developing a new neighborhood today, you're really looking at about $30,000 of infrastructure cost when you're developing a new neighborhood. So it's just sort of the cost of making that available to the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, for me, the septic to sewer is my equivalent of Commissioner O'Brien's 66th Avenue right-of-way. It's basically just too expensive. I mean, we have 64 parcels that are going to benefit at a cost of $2.253 million. So it's basically $35,214 per converted septic tank. And that would give you a capital cost to remove 1 pound of nitrogen annually of $3,402, which is one of the most expensive ways to take out a pound of nitrogen. If you do something similar with the Osprey Acres, in the way Keith McCulley calculates it, it's a total of $24.82 to take out a pound of nitrogen, but his calculations do things differently. Using the same methodology, I get a price of about $802, which is 1/4 of the price here. So going forward, at a $35,214 price per unit with 31,000 units, we're talking of almost $1,100,000,000 for this septic to sewer program. So with that, I look forward to multiple no votes as we go forward talking about septic to sewer, the lone voice of financial reason in the universe, as Commissioner O'Brien is with the right-of-way. So with that, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this issue. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Powell. I live at 12845 Bay Street. I also own 3 properties total on Bay Street in the Roseland area. And as the trim notices have hit my mailbox this week, I'm reminded of 3 things. The first thing is I appreciate that the county has always tried to keep our tax rate very low and the utility bill really low. The second thing is I'm reminded of the purpose of government, and I agree with a lot of people who say is to provide essential services to the citizens. And I don't think there's anything more essential than air and water and potable water. And I've spoken to 3 seats on the dais right now over a battle over the water condition at really one of my properties in Roseland. And there was no procedure for me to get potable water to my house. It not only wasn't a 60-foot wide lot, it was a 50-foot wide lot. And because of the septic, and because of the wells, and because of neighbor septics and neighbors' wells, there was no way for me to get potable water. And it was battles and battles and battles of hard work between the utility department, some of the commissioners, and my neighborhood to figure out a way to get potable water to my street. And the third thing I remember when I got my trim notices is that sometimes we do have to pay for other people's benefits. I looked at the bill and I said, look at all these, the school district tax. And when I think about the number of school-aged children in the Roseland neighborhood, I'm hard-pressed to think of 5 of them. Now, I know it's a completely different department, it's a completely different thing, but I'm looking at what I am paying to live in Indian River County, and I do pay for essential services for other people. And again, there's nothing more essential than air and potable water. Now, as far as potable water goes, I got mine because in my 3 houses, we work with the utilities department. There were 5 owners with 8 parcels, and we paid to bring the water main down from Roseland Road, down 128th Court, and over to a place on Bay Street. And the 5 people paid for the whole street to get water. And why? Because they couldn't afford it. But we still needed the essential service. And those people will benefit down the road. But, you know, it's what we had to do. And it's not like I personally wanted to pay for 1/3 of that project, but I ended up doing that because I needed to have potable water. And I also felt if my neighbors couldn't afford it, you know, they sort of need potable water too, and this was the only way to get it done. So I'm with the people who say, well, people should pay for the things that they only benefit, but sometimes it just doesn't work. and we have to come up with another plan. So I look at the comprehensive plan, and I don't even look at the 2030 plan. I look at the 2020 plan that was written in 1998, and it said that in 1998 that the Roseland area was a priority because of the narrow lots, because of the 100-year-old septic systems. I had 2 of them, and when I had them redone, I'm looking at all this muck and garbage and stuff that's tilled all over my yard, and I'm thinking, Indian River County didn't even exist when these septic systems were put in. And Woodrow Wilson was president. And I'm looking at how they're spreading this stuff around my yard and maybe putting the drain field in yet another place. And it's a stone's throw from the river. And I'm thinking, this is not a good thing. And it's not just for the nitrogen in the river. I'm thinking about this 100-year-old cholera that's in the land. And, you know, when I went to the utilities department about this, I said, this was in the comprehensive plan written in 1998, and what has the county done to implement this? And then I noticed that the comprehensive plan for 2030 was written in the teens, and it says the same thing. And if the county doesn't act now to put in potable water and sewer, we're going to be looking at it in the 2040 comprehensive plan, the 2050 comprehensive plan, the 2060 comprehensive plan, because it's never going to get cheaper. Water is just going to be more strict to get it to homes. And there's never going to be a better political climate on the state level to get this. We have the 2 houses of the state legislature governed by the same party. We have a new governor who ran on a platform of being environmentally concerned, and we get the $500,000. It's not going to get better. It's not like there's going to be a sudden windfall. And so if you truly believe in looking at the forward situation of Indian River County down the road in the future when none of us are here, then we have to consider a way to get the money not out of the pockets of these people who can't afford it, but the county contributing in a way that perhaps they haven't in the past, still try and pursue the grants, but the county needs to help. So I thank you all for your listening.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? There being none, commissioners?
So I'd be happy to move staff's recommendation that we start the process, have some community meetings, and go from there.
We have the motion for Commissioner Adams.
For clarification, I think we need to tell staff which plan so they can present the numbers.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, Commissioner Adams, I'd like Vinny, if you can go back to the one with the sales tax as the placeholder. So Commissioner Adams, if you're, okay, so that would be the option that we would present to the community, okay.
There's a motion for option 3 by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner O'Brien. Any other?
And also, I think Commissioner Adams had said to work with the other constitutionals about putting this on the tax bill. I think that's.
Yes, ma'am.
Just
Come on up to the podium,
Come to the
please.
microphone.
Name and address to the record, please.
My name is Fern Grounds. I live at 2375 11th Court Southwest. I'm listening to all this about the people with the water that need it so badly, and I'm listening to the taxes. Are the sales tax going to be for the Sebastian area, for that area, or is it going to be for the whole state, or what? Because I know there's different sales taxes in different cities. I lived in one where the city was 6.7. You go down to the next city at 7 point for the 7% tax.
So Fern,
So
we have a 1% optional sales tax that the county adds to when you purchase things. And we use that for capital projects throughout the entire county.
Okay.
We use it to build fire stations, libraries, purchase fire trucks, road projects, sewer projects. So it's collected countywide, so 1%, but it is expended countywide on projects that have at least a 5-year lifespan, so a capital project.
Well, I'm just thinking about people that don't want their taxes raised, but I agree with him. You need the air and water
Okay.
completely. So,
But we are not raising the taxes. The ones,
but I'm against raising taxes.
but we're not raising them.
Okay,
The optional sales tax has been in place for over 20 years.
that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern.
Anybody else in the public before we vote? So we have the option by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion passes 3-1. Solari dissenting, Flesher absent. Moving on, we'll go to county attorney matters, Indian River County, St. Lucie County, and Martin County joint meeting.
Thank you,
Mr.
Vinnie.
Reingold.
Thank you very much. Last year, the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners attended a joint board meeting with the Board of County Commissioners of St. Lucie County and Martin County to discuss legislative priorities in advance of the upcoming legislative session. Martin County and St. Lucie County have reached back out to Indian River County to see if the board would be interested in having another joint meeting. This year, the meeting has been tentatively set for October 3rd at 9 a.m. This will be held at the Indian River State College main campus. In order to conduct such a meeting, per state statute, the board would need to adopt a resolution. County Attorney's Office recommends the board approve the attached resolution, and with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Move staff recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this issue? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Commissioner Flesher absent.
Thank you
Ma-
very much.
Now I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners, now's a good time for a break. Would you like a full lunch break or is a 15-minute, get something quick?
15.
Okay, at this point, sorry, Mr. DeBraw, we're going to take a 15-minute break.